Find the product. So now we're going to start multiplying polynomials by using the distributive property. And the distributive property is exactly what it says. I'm going to distribute out whatever's in front of the parentheses to everything inside the parentheses, or everything inside of one parentheses to everything inside of the second parentheses. So let's look at A. So I'm going to take the 5x and multiply it times the negative 3x. To do that, I multiply the coefficients. So 5 times negative 3 would be negative 15. And then I multiply the variables. So x times x is x squared. Now I multiply and I distribute the 5x to the 3 because I have to multiply by everything inside the parenthesis. So 5 times 3 is positive 15, and the x just kind of hangs on for the ride. So my answer is negative 15 x squared plus 15x. Do this one the exact same way, but really be careful about carrying that negative all the way through. The 11 is negative, so I have to multiply everything in there times negative 11. So negative 11 times positive 6x, negative 11 times positive 6 is negative 66, and bring the x down. Negative 11 times positive 11 is going to be negative 121. And that's my answer. Now what happens when I have a binomial times a binomial? Well, I have to do just exactly what I did up here, except twice. So I take the 4x, and that's the only one I'm going to look at right now, and multiply it times the x. Well, 4 times 1 is 4. X times x is x squared. Now I take the 4x and I multiply it times the 7. Well, 4 times 7 is 28, and the x. Now I've done one number inside the first parentheses, but I haven't multiplied the 8 times anything, which means now I have to multiply it times everything inside this other parentheses. So I'm going to take the 8 times the x, and that's 8x, and the 8 times the 7, and that's 56. Now, I have to combine my like terms because, we like things to be simple as possible and use as few terms as possible. I don't have another x squared, but I do have two numbers that have the variable of x right here in the middle. So I can add those two together. I don't have another constant, so I'm finished with that one. So the 4x squared is going to come down. 28 plus 8 is 36. Keep the x, and then bring the 56 down. So there's my answer. Look up here at D. D's done the exact same way. Because I have two numbers here in this parenthesis that have to be multiplied by the two numbers in this parenthesis, I do it as a two-step process. So I'm going to take the first x and multiply it times negative 3x, and that's going to be negative 3x squared. And then take the x and multiply it times the negative 8, and that's going to be negative 8x. Now I have to treat the negative 6 the exact same way. So negative 6 times negative 3 is going to be a positive because it's a negative times a negative. 6 times 3 is 18, and then the x. And negative 6 times negative 8, well, a negative times a negative is going to be positive, and that's going to be 48. And just like this one down here, I have two terms in the middle that have the same variable to the same degree. So I'm going to combine those two like terms. So I have negative 3x squared, negative 8x plus 18x would be plus 10x, and bring down the 48. And that's my answer. This one's done the exact same way, except I've thrown another variable in the mix. So we're going to have to figure out what to do with that y. Well, x times x is easy. I'm going to follow the exact same procedure. So x times x is just x squared. But then I have x times 11y. Well, the only thing I can do to that is make it be 11xy, because x times y is just x times y. That's all I know how to do with that one. Okay, got that done. Now I take this negative 3y and I multiply that times the x, so I'm going to apply the same thing I did to the x times the 11y. So that's going to be negative 3x times y. And then I'm going to take the negative 3y and multiply it times the 11y. Well, negative 3 times positive 11 is negative 33. And y times y, just like we were saying x times x, except it's y squared. Again, I have these middle terms that have the same variables, because I have two, to the same degree. So I can combine those things. So I end up with x squared plus 8 xy, because 11 minus 3 is 8, minus 33 y squared. Now then, what do I do with this thing? Well, I can't really just distribute that squared out like I did before with my exponents, because this whole quantity n plus 14 is squared. So when I square a number or raise it to the second power, it means that I multiply it times itself. So I'm going to do this thing like this. So it's n plus 14 times n plus 14. Now I apply the same thing I've done all the way through to this one, and I apply the distributive property twice. So n times n is n squared. N times 14 is 14n. Then I do the 14 times the n, and that's 14n. And then I do the 14 times the 14. 14 times 14 is 196. Just like we've been doing, those middle terms have the same variable to the same degree. So I have n squared, 14 plus 14 would be 28, and bring down the 196, and that's my answer. So that's multiplying or finding the product between two polynomials.